Hello and welcome to the Jackaroo channel. My name's Dave and today we're going to be fixing this. You hear it? It's the screech from the alternator belt. Okay, it's not, it was doing it a minute ago. So when I start up from cold and I accelerate, the alternator belt screeches. So I'm going to run through how to tighten it up. This is also the same procedure as removal and renewing, but we'll go for it anyway. So first job, raise the bonnet, which I've already done. I'm just going to place you on here so you can see what's going on. So what we've got to do is we've got to remove the battery, and we're going to get into remove the forgot what it's called now. The air conditioning compressor needs to be removed, and it'll also show you how to remove that belt. So once we've removed that out and got it out of the way, we can get into the alternator and we can tighten it up. So I'll show you how to do that, but first of all we'll remove the battery. So we need 10mm for the battery, and I believe it's 10mm on there, but I think the one over there is a different size. So I'll give you a view so you can see it all, and then we'll take it from there. Right, so I hope you realize that the reason you take the negative off the batteries first, off both batteries if you've got two, like there's dual batteries in here, and the reason for that is if let me get a 10mm spanner, I'll show you. So the reason for it is if I touch that onto metal, nothing happens, okay, because the battery is already earthed. However, if I touch the positive to metal, I'll get a circuit and I'll weld the spanner to whatever I'm touching, and I might electrocute myself as well. So we don't want that. So we take the earth off first and we make sure it's disconnected completely from the pole, and on that one. Then if we touch that to earth, it's no longer connected to earth, so the battery won't short out and it won't cause us injury or cause the spanner to get welded and blow up the battery. Okay, so you're wise with that now, so let's go for it. I normally use a ratchet spanner on this, but as soon as you're here today I'm gonna do it manually. So it's fairly straightforward, you just undo it a little bit. Normally undo it a bit further than that. I've forgotten how to use an ordinary spanner. Okay, so I think this is what's causing the issue there. So I had to adjust these because I wasn't getting them tight enough. They weren't going tight enough, and the reason being was that the clamp wasn't clamping enough. Okay, so you can see we've got that completely clear, but we're still connected to earth because this battery is still connected and they're both connected together. Now that one is the one that needs a bigger spanner, so just bear with me. Might be 13. 13 will do it. Loosen it off. Take that off. Okay, so you've got to make sure that's clear. Now we can touch these and touch earth and there won't be an issue at all. And that's the smaller one than that. I actually think they're 12. 12 it is. As you can see, my wrist is touching the bonnet here, the bonnet catch. So if those earths weren't disconnected, that would be an issue. Okay, so I've got to remember to fit that back on as well. Okay, so that's clear. This one's a 10mm. This is the main one. This has got all of the connections on it. And I've got to get this one out of the way because I've got to get the battery out. We need the battery out of the way because it's a pain in the butt to be it's in the way. I suppose they've got to fit somewhere, haven't they? So Alright, let's see if we can get that off. It's not quite loose enough yet. But you can see here I'm also touching this. So that would be another issue. It doesn't matter what metal it is, whether it's ferrous or non-ferrous, it would still be metal. It would still cause an issue. Alright, so the batteries are disconnected. I've made sure that the clamps are well out of the way. They'll be good once I get the battery out. Now, 10mm long reach sockets. Stand by. I've never actually used this in anger. I bought this Azito. Does anybody know? You think that Azito must be Chinese. Actually stands for Aussie Tools, and it's a Melbourne company and they've been in business for 20 years. Sell exclusively through Bunnings. Never knew that. You do now. Okay. Okay, that's good. They're going to take the nut off and the washer off this one because it's attached to a cable. I'll show you in a sec. So we'll take the nut and washer off that. We'll place it on there. So that's that one. Then we've got this one at this side. So that one just needs to have the hook disconnected down there. And then we need to remove this one. Nut and bolt. So get it clear of the cables, and you can see that's just a hook that goes through a hole. So we can put that up there now like that. Alright, so we've got the battery disconnected. Now we need to lift the battery out. Watch your back doing this. Make sure you are careful and you're all clear and you're not straining yourself. Too many wires. Cables on the ground. Okay, let's tilt you forward a little bit so you can see a little bit more. Now, this one here is attached to this. If you press in the little clip or lift up, pull out the clip, that comes off as well. And that's that cable out of the way. So what we've got to do is take these 4 bolts out. Let me get a light. Those 4 bolts there that hold the air conditioning compressor on, and then we lift it and put it on here out of the way. And then underneath down there is the alternator. That's what we need to get to. We'll need a pry bar and we'll need a socket to be able to loosen off the nuts to be able to adjust it. Okay, so to get this off I've got to remove the belt. Okay, up the top there is this pulley here. This is a tensioner pulley. As you can see, there's a bolt there, so just bear with me and I shall go and get a socket. I believe it's 12mm, so we'll give it a go. Yep, 12mm. So I need an extension as well. Okay, now hopefully we don't have to take this intercooler pipe off, but I might get the knuckle and do it that way. The wibbly wobbly head. So what should be happening? So I missed a step. What you have to do first is you've got to undo that nut there. So let's have a look. Is it a 14? It is a 14. And we've got to release that off. I can't release it. Alright, there's a bit of a trick here. I get a slightly longer wrench, so we put that on, get a slightly longer wrench fitted in there, and now I've got an extra long wrench, and now I can loosen it off hopefully. There it goes. Let's go in now. Round a bit more so it's off those pipes. Right, we've loosened it. Now you'll notice that that's dropped back down. So now we can get back to what we were doing. See if I can find my ratchet. Okay. So if I undo it, it moves the idler wheel down. See the idler wheel going down? Okay, and that releases this, and if we go far enough down we should be able to get the belt off the pulley, so we can remove the, still not enough, let's go a bit more. Okay, sorry, knock the camera there. You just keep going till you get enough to be able to lift the belt off. And I hope you can see, lifted the belt off like so. Right, so now we need to undo these nuts here. Okay, now you can take that one off if you want. I don't normally bother. Let's see how it goes. So I think they're 12mm as well. I'm not trying to make you suck eggs or anything like that, but for those that are uninitiated, that is the extension I was using. This is the one I'm going to use. It's a shorter extension, okay? Just so you know what I'm talking about. There we go. The problem is I've let the weight drop onto it. You should take the bottom bolts out first, and if you drop the weight on it, you can't loosen them off by hand. So just make sure you take the bottom 2 bolts out first, and then the top 2, and then you'll be all good. Now, another thing before I take that bolt out, there's a cable here, and that needs to be removed because that goes to the top of the compressor. So make sure you remove that before you remove this. Now the compressor's we're not degassing here. We're not going to disconnect the cables or anything like that. What we're trying to do is just lift it out of the way. So you can see the pipes are still attached. So we're still gassed. So now what we've got to do is, I think we're going to have to take this turbo pipe off. I think it's just in the way. Alright, let's take that off. So, turbo pipe. And disconnect the clip up this end. It's a bit loose. It's not good. And that makes it be a bit tighter. Then we disconnect this end, pull that out, like so. Should be all good. Right, now we can lift this. That's why we take it out. Okay, so the other thing is you're going to have to disconnect your earth, chassis earth. So disconnect your battery earth, your 2 battery earths. If you've got 2, I've got 2 because I've got an additional one. And then now you can lift that up and bring it out of the way. You sit it on the battery tray, it should be fine. Alright, now you've got access to your alternator, the alternator bolt at the front, and then you need a pry bar. Now I've got some pry bars, but what I'm going to use is a tire lever. Let me just go grab it. So my pry bars will work, but I've got my tire lever. Don't know if you can see the tire lever. So the tire lever is a bit longer, and it's also very much easier to put into that gap there and push it back. Okay, so what we need to do now, using the 12mm, is to loosen off that bolt on the front. Just need to loosen it so it will move. Now, there's your 2 alternator belts. Now we just need to, can you see how it moves when you lever it? We just need to tighten it up so there's tension on those belts, because obviously they're slipping and they're fairly new, so they just what they do is they okay, so we'll check that. I'll show you how to check that in a sec. Alright, so what we're looking for is about 1/4 of an inch or half a centimetre's movement on the belt, so they're fairly snug and they're matched pair, so they should be fine. Okay, and then what we need to do is, now we've tightened up that with the ratchet, we need to make sure that that bolt is tight properly with a proper spanner. Whoops. That's camera gravity, I think. So make sure that's tight. Right, that's tight. Make sure you've still got your belts are still tight, which they are, and we're all done. So what we need to do now is we need to put the compressor back again into position. So the best way to do that is to put 2 bolts into the top, like so. We'll put the bottom ones in after, but we won't tighten these up, we'll just put them in place. So we drop this down into position. Get my fingers out of there. Tighten up one of the bolts to take the weight. Get the other one in the other side to get it in the right position. That's all we need to put them in so far. Grab the other 2 bolts and get them in underneath. So cables are always in the way with this, which is always, there's always something in the way. You can't do anything without being something in the way. So make sure they go all the way through and they start to bite. Now if you can't find the hole for them to go in, just wiggle out around the compressor, because it's just the weight of it that's causing it to them not to line up. It's not a lightweight thing. One of them don't seem to want to go in. I've got that one in. This one, there we go. Alright, so they're all in. So we can do the top ones with this. You put the hand tool in that goes straight on. Because we've nipped the top up, the bottom ones are just taking up the slack. It's always best to tighten them up with a hand tool anyway. So that way you're aware of how tight they actually are. How tight they need to be is determined by something, and you just need to make sure they're that tight when you knit them up. So always go over them with a manual. Stock it like that, you always get a little bit more out of them. Okay, so that's back in place. Now what we need to do now is we need to get this, got the belt trap now, haven't I? That was well done. Don't get your belt trap like that, like I've done. Sorry. Is that okay? Hopefully that's alright. So what I've done is I've got the belt trap, can you see? So what I'm going to have to do is wind this up to get it out. I see it rising up. hopefully I can get that out of there now. Okay, now I need to turn it back down, otherwise I won't get the belt over. Right, if you don't know what Murphy's Law is, Murphy's Law states that if something can happen, it will, and it'll always come off the worst place, and it has. It's come off the crank pulley at the bottom, so now I've got to get that back on over the crank pulley at the bottom, which is proving to be a little bit of a pig. Of course it would be, because it's the furthest away. Why wouldn't it? Let me see if I can find a better place for you to be located. Can you see what I'm doing there? So here's the pulley. Let me just. So here's the belt. It's got to go down over the fan pulley, but more importantly, it has to go down over the pulley on the crank at the bottom, which is the one you can't reach, and it's bound to be the one that it comes off and you can't get it back on, because that's what Murphy's Law is. If it can come off, it will, and it has. So what I've got to do is I've got to get that belt back over that bottom pulley down there. So the best thing to do is to take it off, try and fit it over down the bottom, which I've done. Fit it over there and over there, and then all we have to do then is fit it back onto here. Right, we're back in business, but you can see there's a lot of slack in the belt. This is where this pulley comes in, and we need to work it in a clockwise direction to bring up the pulley to tension the belt. So that belt is fairly tight, maybe a touch too tight. Okay. So shining the torch down there, that belt drives the fan, it drives the air conditioning compressor, and it drives from the crank. So the crank drives the belt, which drives the air conditioning compressor, then around the idler pulley and the adjuster to the fan. So that drives the fan. So there's not a lot of strain on this, so it doesn't have to be hugely tight, and you can adjust this easily without taking everything off. Okay, and then down a bit lower down you've got the two double belts of the alternator, which also drive the fan and also drive the alternator. So even if you lose this belt, your fan will still turn, so you won't overheat. Aren't you lucky? Alright, so we've got that back on. So now what we need to do is we need to refit the two earth straps. So we'll do that. The earth straps have this cable clamp on it, and the cable clamp holds this. It supposedly holds this in place. Okay, never seem to get it to work that well, but I do leave it on there. So alright, so let's get the two cables in and the clamp on the top, and then we'll fit this cable screw back into the hole here. Now I usually have that one above so that they'll both fit together and they'll fit fairly snugly, and that seems to be working, so that's good. Right, so okay, so I can't get it right round, so that'll have to do. So we'll just hold that in place while we knit this up again. Right, now that idea of that is that this plug will go into, so I've got trapped up here. Now the idea was it went underneath this cover, and I didn't like that. I didn't like the fact that it was in that cover, underneath that cover, so I moved it. Now it fits in there, and then that's going to get held in there, but it gets pretty grubby in there, so a clean out is not going to hurt it. A clean out and a bit of dielectric grease. He's never going to hurt this. Okay, now just have a look in there, because I think this is a single connector. Yes, it is. It's a single connector. So you can see, I don't know if you can see down in there, but there's one spade terminal. That's it. Okay. Now we'll give it a clean on both sides. This is a never-ending tin of electrical contact cleaner. Now we have a touch of dielectric grease, a bit there, and a bit on this. Around the outside. Alright, so now we fit it back together. Now it'll only go together one way, and then it goes into there like so, and you clamp that around it to hold it in position. Okay, and then this sits underneath that pipe down there, out of the way. I sit it underneath this pipe, so along the top. Right, so we've got them back on, we've got that back on, all tightened up, all the belts are tightened up. Okay, so the next thing to do is to refit this pipe and then put the battery back in. So we'll do that. Okay, so it's always worthwhile having a look inside your turbo when you're here, because if you have a catch can fitted, that in there tells you how your turbo is running. If you get lots of grease and oil and dirty carbon in there, then that is an indication that your catch can's not working that well. But I seem to be doing okay in there. I don't seem to have a lot of problems with it, so I'm just going to put it back together. Okay, so I don't normally do this like this, so it's going to be a little bit more awkward, but it should go on. I don't think that's on properly. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we're on. Okay, so let's just check the other end. Make sure that's on correctly, and it is. We'll put this clip back over it like that, so it's in position. And then the key one is this one here, because it gets very. If you've had a lot of oil seepage due to the EGR, that gets very swollen, and if it's swollen, it doesn't clamp up that well. So let me see if I can get a bit more light in there for you. Hopefully you can see it at that. So this clamp here it can get a little bit funny. Now when you've got your battery in place and you want to remove this, you need a long screwdriver like this, otherwise you need very small hands, and you put them in there and you can get it sorted out. But I like this long screwdriver for doing this job. Now I thought that this was a bit loose when I came in, so I'm just going to make sure it's tightened up. Yep, that looks good. Okay, so I'll just move you around. We're just going to do the other side. We're going to nip this up. If I remember, when I go to a scrapyard and I see another one of these, I'll have a new clamp on here, because I've had to cut a slot in it to get it to work, because it had worn out. But it does have a lot of travel on it, so you can turn it by hand, get it into position, and then screw it up. This doesn't need to be majorly tight, and the reason is that it's clamping onto plastic, so it'll just crush the plastic if you go too tight with it. So once it starts to nip up like that, that's all you need. You just don't want any water ingress in there if you're going through a river crossing or something. Reconnect this, One day I'll work out what that's for. And then I loosened this off, and I shouldn't have done, I didn't need to. This is my return from the EGR back to the inlet for my catch can. This is where the EGR sump pressure vents back into normally. It's normally a straight through pipe, but I've replaced it and put a catch can in. So we'll just nip that up. Okay. So I'll give you a quick tour. Bear with me. So your EGR is here, and your outlet from your EGR is over there. That's the outlet from the sump. The EGR controls via the throttle body controls this. Now normally that would come through and go straight back into there, back into your inlet, carbon up all your engine and cause you all sorts of trouble. So you fit a catch can. So mine goes into there, and inside there is a strainer. It catches all the oil out of the air, returns the air back through here, hopefully cleaner, into there, and then back into your turbo. So when you take that pipe off, that is how you know how well your catch can is working, because of the state of the end of your turbo. Okay, now let's put the battery back in. So the first job is to put the battery tray back in. I'm just going to tilt you down so you can see what's going on. Hopefully you can see. So we put the battery tray back in, hopefully. That's it. There are two holes, look, see, two dimples, and it fits in snugly. Now this needs to go back over the top of the battery. This is a battery monitor, an Aircon battery monitor, which just I have one on each battery, and they all monitor the way in which the batteries work, how well they're behaving, etc., etc. Okay, so the first thing is to remember we need to fit this to this cable outlet here. So it just clips in like that. That is going to go in there, and then eventually it's going to clip to the top of the battery, but for the moment it's going to be loose. Okay, so we need to have plenty of space to get the battery through, and because it's damned heavy, we just need to make sure we don't hurt ourselves when we do this. Okay. Now, when you lift your battery back in, make sure you've got your positive on the correct side. So my positive is the left side as I look at it, so there's positive and there's negative. So we should be all good to go. So I take mine in from the side like this, making sure that I get all the cables around it and none of them are trapped underneath, like this one is. And it goes down onto the tray at the bottom. Now, maybe you want to fit this afterwards because it seems to have got in the way a little bit this time, but once it's in position it should be good to go. Right, I'm going to take it out of there again actually, because I can't get it out. Oh well, I'm going to try and get that in. Right, so that's in its right place. Okay, so we're in. Alright, everything's free from underneath. Don't make sure there's nothing trapped under your battery, and it's all good. Now I'll move my battery that way so that this can't come out. Now you need to fit this back. So make sure you got it the right way around, because you can get it the wrong way. Make sure you don't short it across your battery, because this is metal, and if you touch those two with it, it will go bang, and you'll go bang with it. So put your hook into the hole down there, and then nip this down so it can't fall out. Don't need to tighten it up, just need to nip it down, but you've got to line this up. You get this bolt, put this in. That's two things lined up. Now I must be bleeding somewhere because I've bled onto there. I don't know where I'm bleeding from, but I'm bleeding from somewhere. I don't know what I've done. Anyway, well, it is what it is. Okay, so I get my nut and my washer, they go over that, and then that goes into position somewhere down there. Now I don't get cables underneath this because when I clamp it down I'll trap them and it won't do them any good. So don't put cables underneath it, make sure the cables go over the top. Okay, so what we need this and that and this again. Now we need it on tighten. So this one first. Don't tighten it too much, it'll twist the battery. The idea of this is to hold the battery in place, not to rip it in half. So this one is quite important that it doesn't come out the bottom when you fit it, because if it drops out the bottom it won't come out. Okay, so that needs to be a touch tighter. Right, so that's good, that's not going anywhere. Okay, now I've got to reconnect my battery. So this I normally leave sitting up here. So this is the reverse of, well that's good, so the Ryobi's just quit again. We're not no light, so I'll use my torch if we need a light. So fitting the battery back on is reverse of the taking off. It's positive then negative, and the reason is while I'm clamping up the negative, while I'm clamping up the positive, I don't want to touch a negative area on the engine that's shorted out. It'll short out with if it's connected onto the negative. So I make sure both negatives are disconnected and I tighten this up. Just think, what you're trying not to do is create a circuit. So if the negative's not connected, I can't create a circuit. But you've got to remember with dual batteries that if that one's connected, you can still create a circuit. So you have to disconnect them both. It can be a pain in a derriere, but right, just make sure it's tight. Make sure you get that on. Alright, go do the other one at the other side. Just give you a bit of a view while I do it. And now we're going to connect this one. Now we've got to remember to connect this in place, and that is a wiring loom connector. Okay, so I need a 12, that's 14, 17, I've got a 12 somewhere, I don't know where I've put it, up there. I need a 12 for this side. Now I haven't connected the earth over the other side, so I'm good to go. I shouldn't have to worry about earthing out on this side either, because I haven't connected the other earth. Now make sure you don't have these sticking up, because when the bonnet comes down it might catch them. That's all good and well. Put this cap back on. It used to drop down but it doesn't now because I like that cable there, but never mind. Now we can start with the earth, and I've got a broken battery clamp, which is not very good. Okay, so I have to see if I've got another battery clamp now. So what you're going to see here is why everybody hates China so much, because you buy what you think is a decent piece of equipment. Ignore that, because I'm touching earth, and it breaks, and you find that what you think is brass is actually cast iron, and it's just sprayed with brass paint or brass coating of some sort. So it's cast, so it's no strength at all. So that's now 3 sizes I've got on here. I've got 12, 10, 12 and 13. This is 13. So I'll clamp this up Now that noise you keep hearing is a horn. It's because when I touch this on, I'm reconnecting my earth. So anything that's ready to go will go. Now that's all back on, that's good. All I've got to do now is fit this one. So I always end up with this one down the bloody side and forget about it. It's a good thing it's not positive at this side because I'll be stuck. I always do this. I don't know how I manage to do that every time, but I do. Now, make sure that you get the loop over. No noise this time because obviously it's connected at the other side already. So the earth is connected via the chassis. So there's a cable goes to the chassis at that side, and that cable goes down to the engine, and there's a cable on this side that goes to the chassis and a cable that goes to the engine. So the this battery is earthed out even though this wasn't connected. So we're all good there. They're all fitted. That's all good. They're back on. That's back on and tight. The cables are all done up. Those are done up. Everything's done up. We're all happy. Let's take off the tools off here. We've got no spare bolts or nuts, so that's good. The problem I've got now is I've got to make sure I separate Rob's tools from mine, because he'll be angry if I keep his tools. Alright, so we're back in the car. Let's start the engine. Hopefully there's no clunks and clanks. Turbo boost gauge is working. No screeches. Working well. Okay, job's done. I'll turn it all off because I don't want the radio on. So everything's done. We've tightened up the alternator belt. I've shown you how to do the aircon belt and the alternator belts, and removing the alternator belts I didn't do, but that's just a case of doing exactly what we did but pushing the alternator forward and the belts will unclip and come off. Then you have to feed them around the fan. You have to feed all of them around the fan, but we're all up and running. Let's just one thing we didn't check: aircon. There it works. Blue light on. Got cool air coming in. Lovely. All good. And I can hear it. I can hear the pump working anyway. So that's that done. So that's 2 jobs today, and hopefully you've learned something. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the comments below. And if you want any information, just please ask me in the comments below, and I'll get in touch with you somehow. Please like and subscribe, and if possible, please consider joining Patreon. It isn't much per month, and it really helps to make these videos. So thank you very much, and I'll see you out there.